Hey, good evening, coaching students. Thanks for joining us here for this week's coaching call. Um, this is June 13th today, right?
Yep.
That date's right.
So.
Yeah, I think that is correct. Well, good.
That's what I put down. I thought it was.
Yeah, I think that's what I've been putting down too. So if you're wrong, I'm wrong too. Well, great. We like doing this here. We've got a little bit of time to cover things that are more specific to the coaching students. A lot of you have purchased property that is that's either some of you may already have the property, your deeds received. Some of you may just be waiting for deeds to be received on stuff that you've bought, and so really, it's a good time to talk a little bit more about some of the simple aspects of selling and some of the things that you basically need to do, to sell properties.
Yeah, exactly. And what we kind of want to go over today is there's two primary tools that you're going to use, at least to begin with. There's a lot of other resources that we've talked about in other trainings to market your property. So we have a lot of students that are going to be getting their deeds soon. What's the first step I need to do when I get my deed? Well, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to list it on Zillow, and then also follow that up with some Craigslist listings. Essentially, and so what we want to do today is we want to talk about Zillow, kind of show you how Zillow works, all of the tools that are available for Zillow. We use Zillow for a lot of different resources. We use it to find comparable property along with Realtor.com, but it's one of our primary resources. Also, when you list property on Zillow, it's going to include that listing in other websites like what's it called, Trillia?
Trulia?
Yeah, exactly. And it's really one of the best places to market your property to a mass amount of people.
Yeah. That's really the primary advantage to some of these different platforms is the exposure that they get due to being used, so much more than most other things. And so, it's really the exposure that we're after when it comes to places that we want to list the property. And so, I think getting the property listed on Zillow is going to be one of the first things we do. We may end up offering it to the neighbors. That's something that we'll sometimes do at the very beginning to kind of give any of the neighbors, if they want, the chance to buy it before we try to sell. But really, you could pretty well list it and send it out to the neighbors at the same time.
Yeah, really. I mean, you can go ahead and list it, and the neighbors have that certain time to get kind of a discount. And so, this is what's going to expose it to a huge amount of people. And Zillow is what makes Zillow nice is that you can list your properties on there for sale by owner for free. That includes lots. It includes homes, not commercial, anything other than commercial, but any type of land or lot property, or any type of home or condo or something like that. You're going to be able to list it on Zillow and market it to a huge amount of people. And so that's going to include real estate agents that will be looking at your property. They may call because they have a buyer that's interested. That may include personal buyers. But, that's primarily what we're going to use it for, not in addition to not only researching, but to actually list our properties for sale.
Yeah, the listings on Zillow are fairly simple to do. This is an example of how you might set up a listing, and the idea is, and really, the more information you can provide here, the better. If you can obtain more information about the property, if it's a property that you've sent somebody by to take images of, then definitely use those images. Get lots of those. Anything you can do to provide more information is going to, I think, help the listing here. But it's pretty easy. In fact, we'll go through the process. We'll probably look at Zillow a little bit. Or actually, I didn't know if we were going to look at one of the different sites. But it's something that you can basically do, and a lot of times the information that you need to set it up is already kind of contained in your in your real estate portfolio. in terms of you already have a bunch of images of the property and a lot of the map images and things like that, the information about the property. So it's just a matter of being able to type up, some details about the property, and that's, I think, one of the easier ways to do that, I think, is to look at other ones that you think look good or that are appealing.
Yeah, exactly. And when we're listing these properties, it's going to take you through a process. But one thing we'll kind of look at and we want to mention is that you have the ability to really hone in and locate and mark. I'm trying to think how to say it.
Essentially, you have to place a marker on the location of the property.
If you just submit it, it's not going to put it on the street address just by putting the street address in there. And so, you actually have to go in sometimes and find it. If you have any questions with that.
Yeah, especially if it's in a rural area at all. In fact, I don't know if it does it with everybody when they enter it, but you definitely can't just enter an address. You want to basically pin the location of the property. And what's nice about doing it that way as well is that once it's pinned, Zillow is able to pull up that property whenever people are looking in the area. If you don't have it pinned correctly, then what could happen is, basically you believe you have your property listed for, Clinton, Mississippi here, but in reality, you've got all the information there that says Clinton, but it's getting pulled up in someplace in Jefferson, Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi. Yeah, and so it's not actually going to pull up with the properties when people are looking for it. You want it to pull up when people are looking, because basically you want to be able to show you've got, the best pricing on there and, the best property basically available.
One of our students essentially listed his property for sale, and it was an Arkansas property, and it threw it out like the property was in Little Rock, but the property was actually, several counties over. And so when somebody went to look for the property, if they looked for the property in Little Rock, then it would pull up the ad there. But if they went to where the actual county was or the city, they're not able to pull up the property there as well, because essentially the pinpoint or the marker where the property is located isn't set correctly. So when you're going through and creating your ad, you want to make sure to check and see, and it has a tab down there that says edit the location or something like that, and you can click on that tab, and essentially from there you can kind of use their overhead map feature to hone in where your property location is, and essentially mark it in the right location. So when it comes to Zillow, it's going to be a tool that we're going to use to really locate, to value property, to locate property, to see comparable properties that have sold and that have recently sold. But we're really going to use it to sell our properties. It's going to be one of the best free tools that you can use to market to the most amount of people, because even if people are going in there to look to see what the property of their home is worth, they're going to be able to see your property for sale in their area, over kind of in those side listings. And so they'll look up their home, but over in the side listings, they'll see, oh, there's a lot for sale for $3,000.
Actually, did you want me to jump over onto Zillow right now?
We can just talk about Craigslist
for a minute
and look at all of them. Craigslist, the reason you want to use Craigslist, if there's any type of local type of free classified service, check with newspapers, check with radio stations, or also TV stations will sometimes have classified sites. If there's a local one that a lot of the locals use, then you can use that in addition to Craigslist as well. But what we want to do is we want to constantly put this property up for sale, especially if we're wholesaling it to buyers that are looking essentially for wholesale properties. And Craigslist kind of brings in a clientele that many times are looking for deals, and if we're offering deals, then it's going to be a good place to market our property. Now, it does give you the ability to renew it for so many times, and then you'll need to repost it. But if you've got everything saved, then essentially you can renew it all of those different times before you even have to repost the ad. But you'll want to keep that renewed and updated. That way it's at the top of the list. Especially in helping do ads for my dad's company and selling all of the properties they did for many years. constantly having that ad up in people's face, we'll have people that say, yeah, I saw the ad for 2 months before I ended up calling, and they ended up being the buyer. And so you kind of constantly want to throw that up into their face, so that essentially they are constantly seeing that property, so that they're aware of it.
Yeah. Something else that's also worth noting is with a lot of the properties that we're selling, we are wholesaling properties. Okay, so this is really something where it's discounted prices. We're doing it for cash. It really appeals to people that buy on some of the classified sites, like local sites that we have, or something like Craigslist. And if Craigslist is the primary classified site for the area, then it's probably going to be really heavily used, unless they've got some kind of other alternative. But
I don't know how many times it is people look at something 7 times or something like that before they end up buying. And that's essentially what we want to be able to do, is we just want to keep putting that in front of people's face until eventually one of them decides to buy it. Because there's going to be people that don't call, that just continue to look at the ad, and then eventually will end up calling because it really is kind of what they're looking for. They're just kind of holding back. And a lot of times those end up being people that are going to buy. So it's pretty easy to create a Craigslist ads. It's free, it's easy to update. And so it's just going to want to be a resource that we're going to want to use to continually throw these properties up for sale, where local buyers are going to have access to them.
Yeah, and the listing on this is also the same way, in terms of the information that you're going to provide. The more information you can provide here, the better. Sometimes if you go to look at a lot of other real estate on classified sites, you'll see lots of bad examples, and then occasionally you'll see good examples. And really, you just want to you want your ad to stand out, and really it's not that hard to do that. You just need to have good images on it and information, because a lot of people just post their stuff with almost nothing, and that makes it pretty difficult to sell. But something like this, I think the whole idea behind posting a lot of information there is to get somebody to take that emotional ownership of it, before they've done anything. I mean, that's why they buy, is because they keep looking at it, and they keep, they are thinking about, how they can make it work, so really, it's about trying to show them more, give them more to think about and look at with the property versus less, because again, more selling points, more things about the property that to try to get their attention on it.
Yeah, and one thing you can kind of do, and it sounds a little bit funny, but sometimes you can kind of trick with the price a little bit after a certain time. So say you've listed it for 2 or 3 months and you haven't got a lot of action. Well, don't be afraid to suddenly list the property for 2 weeks, an extra $1,000. So go up in price $1,000, and kind of, see what happens. It's funny, my uncle told me to do that, and I didn't believe him. And he sat on properties for a while and ended up raising the price. And then suddenly those people that were looking at the property were scrambling to try to call and get it for the price that it was originally offered for.
Yeah.
And so you can try those different kind of techniques. It's not going to hurt, because we decide what the price is to list an extra $500 or drop an extra $500. Either way, on those on those Craigslist ads, because it's not going to change up a whole much. You won't do that as much on Zillow as you would on a Craigslist.
Yeah, and it is interesting how things like that, like changing the prices, can help. Something else that's also, I think, important for a lot of you to begin to grasp is the time frames for selling. Because real estate is one of those things that doesn't always sell immediately. In other words, it's not unusual at all to have a property take 3 to 6 months to sell.
No,
that's not a crazy amount of time at all. And I know that a lot of times you want to see something happen sooner than that.
Yeah, but especially at wholesale prices. I mean, when we're talking about wholesale prices, we're not giving these properties away. We still want, anywhere between 30 to 50, 60% of the property's value. And these generally need to be cash buyers. So you're not going to have the same type of buyers that are going to come up maybe if it's a single family home or something like that. And even with that single family home, you're going to have, if you're wholesaling, you're going to have a lot of people that are essentially looking for loans on it. So you're looking for a cash buyer. So as long as you're not paying out a huge amount of money and HOA fees or something like that on the property, then it doesn't hurt to sit on the property for 3 to 6 months, even 8 months, a year to sell the property if you're making a huge return on it. So if you bought it for 10 cents on the dollar and you're selling it for 50 cents on the dollar and you're not paying a huge amount of property taxes, then it's worth sitting on the property for a time because you have so little invested into it and it's essentially an asset for you. In some ways, having that on your books as an asset could be a benefit for you just as an asset itself. And so, when we're looking at these different types of properties and buying for wholesale, because we're looking for generally cash buyers, we may need to sit on it. Now, we could drop it to where we're just doubling or tripling our money. So if we bought a property for $100 and we listed it for $1,500, maybe we can sell it in 30 days. But if we want to get, a good amount out of it, if we want to get a 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 grand out of a property, then we're going to need to sit until we get that cash buyer.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is a little bit longer, process. And again, sometimes it can happen really fast. We've got more students that are selling properties, and it's exciting to see it happen. At the same time, though, of course, it's going to happen because you're selling property cheaper than anybody else is, and you're doing it because you're able to buy it cheaper than anybody else is basically able to buy it.
Yeah. I guess kind of the point you're making is if you're not paying a lot on property taxes and you paid very little for the property, let's say it's, you bought it for $100 and you're just trying to sell it for $2,000, but there's not a huge amount of real estate in that area just because there's not a huge amount of buyers. Instead of trying to sell it for $100, you could, there's no harm in sitting on it and, keeping it at that $2,000 for 6 months or 7 months to see if it sells, because your investment is so little and your, essentially output is so little.
Yeah.
And if you needed to, you could do seller financing and list it on eBay and get it
and sell it.
Yeah,
sell it really quickly. In fact, eBay is a good option to sell properties that you haven't paid a lot of money for, because you can basically recover your investment, and then some, through the actual sell itself of the property, or through if you've got some kind of documentation fee or something like that, and it helps to recover some of it. So you can make profit on it up front, but you can also sell it with financing terms. So the people that buy it on eBay are basically agreeing to some type of a payment plan, to financing on it, and their initial payment counts as a down payment essentially on it. So eBay is a good way, though, because it also has a lot of exposure, and it's also because it's an auction. You can sometimes even eBay stuff though doesn't sell. You have to do multiple sales, but when you're able to offer seller financing on attractive properties, it's pretty easy to find buyers.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Now, just a couple of things on Zillow for those, if you haven't really used this a lot, just a couple of things to take note of here. First, and that is you can change out the map setting right here, between the kind of like the street, what they call this here, they call it automatic. You can basically do between aerial and that, because a lot of times you normally can't see an aerial view on it unless you get really close. Also, the things you're seeing on the right here are listed. They're basically going to list the properties, and what they're going to show you are based on which boxes, basically what types of property you want them to show you. You can decide that. And so if we were looking here, this is all the for sale potential listings here. There's stuff for rent. If we wanted to see the recently sold, which we've talked about that a lot of times before, how sometimes we'll check that to try to gauge basically what properties are selling for in an area and how much is selling. But we could click on that, and it would change it. And then the other thing we can do here is we can arrange this either from from newest to oldest, or from you can go from lowest to highest in price.
Yeah, you can also go up to the home type and check by type. So if we're only looking for land, we don't want to waste time looking at houses or condos or townhouses or anything like that. We want to cut it down to see just what the land is. Also up here in the top search section, what makes this really nice is you can search by county, you can search by city, and it's just going to pull in all of the real estate for sale or currently for sale or that is sold within that particular area. So if we were looking in a particular city or a county, we could see everything that's available in the county, or we could, shrink that down and see everything that's available in the city. So if we were to go to Hinds County, Arkansas, it would pull up the whole county. But if we just want to see the property in Clinton, which is a city within there, we could search Clinton City, Arkansas, and it would pull up just the property within the city.
Yeah, that's right. What is the name of the Little Rock, Arkansas? Starts with a P.
Pulaski.
Pulaski. Yeah, that's right. So if we wanted to change this up just a little bit here, we could go Pulaski County here and see what it shows us. Like Pulaski County, it's giving us 1,200 results. Let me see how many of those. 362 recently sold. They're showing us there. So we basically got like 940 pieces of property there total, and we've got about 362 that are recently sold, and the first maybe the first 20 of them or so are probably all tax properties,
Well,
properties.
those ones that are the homes and stuff are probably family transfers of some sort as well. Some of the $100 ones or the $1 ones.
Oh yeah.
Ones.
Yeah, they are homes.
I guess
most of these look like land.
Like,
yeah, pre-foreclosure.
The $106 one or something like that. If they're any type of home,
yeah, if it's just like sold 142.
Yeah, that's just some type of family transfer of some sort.
It'll say foreclosure of some sort. It'll say foreclosure on there usually if it's a tax sale property.
Yeah.
Yeah. And now, beyond this, creating an account on it is pretty simple. And I don't know if we wanted to try logging on into this, or if we wanted to go and look at anything else.
Well, essentially, it's pretty easy to do. I mean, you can see up there on the top, you can join. If you haven't already joined, you can join.
I am going to join. I don't think I have joined.
I think you can click on that and continue to shade.
So now, if you want to list your property here, let's see here, list your rental. That's not really what I want here.
Up there underneath your My Zillow would be any of the properties that you'd essentially saved. And you can, change up if you've got a website or if you've got a blog post or something that you're going to list your postings on. You can go ahead and post your listing, and then you can go ahead and post them right there to list your property.
Yeah, so basically, right here is where we would start, and they have you go through and create
so you can see here, it's going to post it on Zillow, Hot Pads.
Trulia.
Yeah.
Nice. So yeah, if we wanted to go through and start the listing process here, again, it's going to have us put in the address here, but after we put in the address is where we would have to pin it, and we want to make sure that that's where we get that part right.
Yeah, and if we don't have like a full address, but we have a road, then we'll just do road. So if it was Tree Road or whatever, we just type in the address essentially.
Yeah.
I think they're going to ask for a parcel number. One thing that they're going to do, if it is a lot, then they're going to ask for a parcel number. But if it doesn't have a full address, then they will ask for a parcel number, and you'll need to put that parcel number in, and that'll go ahead and verify it. Also, once you've set it up and set up the listing, then Zillow is going to go ahead and look over the listing, and they're going to contact you by phone, and you'll need to kind of listen to their message so that they go ahead and post it live for you. So there's a few different steps that you're going to have to go through, but it's worth every single step just getting the essentially property listed for sale. sometimes it won't quite makes you verify that you're the owner of the property.
Yeah, I don't know if I want it. I don't dare add it.
Yeah, it looks like you're adding a room. Oh, that's a room for rent.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
But anyhow, the process itself there is really pretty simple. Really, there are listing it on Zillow is something that you can get done. Also, the classified sites are pretty easy. I don't know if any of you have never used Craigslist before in terms of setting up the ad. That takes really not much time at all. And
One thing that's nice about it, I mean, it is kind of just a cheap site, but they're going to have different types of real estate essentially available, all over. So you can check. Sometimes there'll be, that town or that city actually has a Craigslist website that you can use to post the real estate. So essentially, that's really targeting to specific buyers within that area. So we could go look at a particular county. It's pretty easy to do the ad. You just sell real estate.
I'm just gonna see that.
I think it's a different ad. I mean,
for sale by owner. I just
wanted to click on. I think there's like an actual real estate thing.
Oh.
Like housing offered.
Oh, okay, that's right. That's right, because we have
and the real estate by owner, and then we go ahead and post the listing. We can do the street address with a Google map that pulls it up as well. Add any additional information that we need to, and go ahead and post it, and it's going to post it.
Yeah, it's really pretty simple to do. And if there are any other sites out there, really what's nice about learning it and doing it on these sites is posting is an eBay auction is really similar, to the process you're going to go through to list properties on Zillow and places like that. You have a few more options and things to consider with the auction, but it's essentially the same process. So if you have the information to post it on on Zillow or Craigslist, you'll have it basically the information to post anywhere.
Yeah.
All right, let me back out of this thing here. Okay. Outside of that, the other thing we were gonna mention was that the other thing you can do is write up a simple letter for the neighbors. Basically, just tells them that you're an investor. In fact, I think we've got a copy of it. Of one you can use, but it doesn't have to be something fancy. In fact, a lot of times if it doesn't come across as being like overly fancy, you might get a better chance of them looking at it as an opportunity versus some real estate investor that's looking to take them out. There's nothing wrong with telling people that you're a new investor and you bought the property, and see if they want to buy it and offer it to them for a good price. What's nice about it is normally we paid a low enough price that we can sell it for, we can offer it to the neighbors for a low price, and it's worth it, to do it because, it's a quick transaction. Somebody can find a buyer almost immediately.
Yeah, if you bought it for a couple $100, then what's the harm in selling it for $2,000?
Yeah.
That's not a huge amount of profit, but well, it's a huge amount of profit in any scenario. It's just not a huge amount of profit when we're talking about real estate.
Yeah.
But off of that type of deal, as long as it's smooth, it's usually going to be a smooth transaction with the owner. You can sell or finance it, have them put $500 down, $100 a month for the next, what would that be, 15 months or whatever.
Yeah.
And essentially they would own the property, or $125 a month for 12 months, and after a year, you go ahead and issue the property to them. Even in that kind of scenario, it's worth it because you're going to make your money back on that initial $500 down.
Yeah, exactly. And everything that comes in after that is just income. And you're never at risk of losing the property, without it being paid for, because you're not going to transfer title until it's paid for. So, you're in that same strong position that the bank's in when they're offering financing, and it does make it quite a bit easier to sell property. The real question though is how well it will work for you and how much you paid for the property. If you didn't pay a lot for it, doing seller financing works out awesome, because you can still be profitable with it and create, income. But for some people, they're trying to get that full cash price right away.
Yeah. Well, probably get ready here for the coaching call.
Oh yeah, I guess we've got the weekly webinar here coming up here in just a minute. So we'll probably have some of you on for that as well, which I think we'll have some cool things to go and look at. It's cool areas to look at. Really, there are so many auctions and things taking place. It's crazy the number of opportunities that are out there when you really start to dig into it. There's just so much stuff for sale.
Yeah, I think for the webinar, we're going to just go through and look at upcoming auctions and properties and spend the whole time just reviewing upcoming sales.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll see you on there in a couple of minutes.
All right, see you guys then.